Hey everybody, another week has passed. It's Saturday, and that means it's time for a new installment of Jack's Interesting Facts. As always, I'm Jack Lombardo, and I am in dire need of a haircut, man. This whole COVID-19 thing with all the stores shut down, but I hope everybody is feeling well, staying healthy, keeping positive, and with any luck, within a short period of time, this whole pandemic will be over and we can get on with our normal lives. But in the meantime, I want to take a look this week at something that some people love, some people hate, but hopefully all of you find interesting. And that is some interesting facts about professional wrestling. Oh yeah, dig it! Okay, here we go, getting right to it. You might find it interesting that only one professional wrestler has had an action figure made for all four of the major wrestling promotions, not counting the new AEW. Those promotions being WWE, WCW, TNA, and ECW. And that wrestler that had four figures made is Raven, of all people. Not the biggest of stars. However, he did compete for all the promotions, so it makes sense that he got that figure. Now let's go back to the early days of WWE, then known as the WWF, or the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. Now, most wrestling fans will know that the inaugural champion was Nature Boy Buddy Rogers. They'll probably also know that he dropped the title in only about 2 weeks. What they may not know, however, is why he dropped the title. The fact of the matter is that Buddy Rogers was expected to be a big star in the company and to have a long reign. However, days after winning the title, he suffered a mild heart attack. And being afraid that he may have a major heart attack and die in front of the fans, it was decided that he should drop the title, and he did so 2 weeks later to Bruno Sammartino in a match that only lasted 48 seconds. Rogers did continue on with the company. From that point forward, he just continued in short matches like that. But continuing on with Nature Boys, you might find it interesting to learn that Nature Boy Ric Flair, one of the true icons of the business, he was actually abandoned as a child and then kidnapped by an illegal adoption ring. Luckily, he was eventually adopted legally by the Flair family, spelled Fleuhr, and went on to be the major world champion and icon that he is today. But looking at other professional wrestlers that had an interesting childhood or upbringing, Vince McMahon himself, owner of WWE. Vince McMahon did not meet his actual father until he was 12 years old. Now, Vince McMahon Sr. is his real father. However, he had left when McMahon was a child, and he was given the surname of Lupton. Vinnie Lupton is how he was raised. That was the name of one of his many stepfathers. Now, I tried to find out exactly how many there were, but I just kept getting the words many or several. But if anyone knows, put it in the comments. I'd be interested to know exactly how many stepfathers Vince McMahon had. Speaking of Vince McMahon, obviously the Attitude Era is when he became a major star on screen as the Mr. McMahon character. And his most major feud, of course, was with Stone Cold Steve Austin. Now, Steve Austin is known for chugging beer on screen. However, you might find it interesting to know that Stone Cold Steve Austin does not like beer and actually considers himself a connoisseur of fine wines, as he says. Interesting, I never knew that. But he became famous in 1996 when he became the King of the Ring. However, another man has been known as the King of Professional Wrestling since long before the days of Stone Cold Steve Austin, and that was Jerry the King Lawler, who still continues in professional wrestling as a commentator to this day. Now, many fans will remember that in the late 70s, Lawler had a very interesting and kind of bizarre feud with actor Andy Kaufman, who played Latka on Taxi. This ended up on Letterman. It was a big deal. It's talked about to this day. However, fans might find it interesting to know that Lawler's original opponent was not supposed to be Andy Kaufman. Another person was slated for this feud. However, he died before it ever got started. The original person was actually supposed to be Elvis Presley. Sounds bizarre, but when you think about it, I mean, the King of Wrestling versus the King of Rock and Roll, and Elvis did have that judo kind of karate background, so kind of interested to know what that feud would have been like, but guess we'll never know. Rest in peace, Elvis. Anyway, let's go back to the early days of professional wrestling at this point. And you might find it interesting to know that several presidents were actually trained professional wrestlers, including people like George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. Now, Abraham Lincoln was the most known as a wrestler, and he's actually considered the inventor of the choke slam. Now, somehow I don't picture the great Emancipator picking up people by their neck and slamming them to the ground, but he did. And we're going to close this out with something that I found that I think is incredibly interesting. And one of the earliest professional wrestling matches that people talk about was between two kings. It was King Henry VIII of England and King Francis of France. Their match took part on June 24th, 1520. The two countries had been competing in some kind of goodwill games. They were called the Field of Cloth and Gold, where members of the two kings' courts competed in jousting, archery, all kinds of sports, and the event finished with a wrestling match between King Henry VIII and King Francis. Now, King Francis realized he could actually win this match. However, King Henry VIII was known for having a bad temper and a big ego, and Francis thought it would be best if he lost the match on purpose to kind of keep the goodwill. So he threw the match, and this became known as the King's Act to fool and bamboozle everybody, also to this day known as kayfabe. Well, that's some interesting facts about professional wrestling. I'll see you again next week, and everybody continue to stay healthy.